The American justice system just served a woman 22 years in prison for murdering a man who was getting his kids ready for school 2,000 miles away. Melissa Murray was 28 when she watched 12 strangers decide she was a killer. The evidence seemed ironclad. Daniel Cole's blood in her car trunk, surveillance footage of her dragging what looked like a body to a dumpster, and her complete inability to explain what happened that night. She claimed she'd blacked out after their fight. The jury didn't buy it. What really enrages you, though, is that Daniel Cole was learning how to be Jason Keller, while Melissa was learning how to live in prison. New name, new wife, new life, built on the foundation of Melissa's destroyed existence. What would you do if you discovered you'd lost over 2 decades of your life because someone decided to fake their own death and frame you for it? Drop a comment below, because this case will make you question everything you think you know about justice. And if stories like this make you as angry as they make us, hit that subscribe button right now. We're not just telling stories. We're fighting for people the system forgot. Austin, Texas, 1998. Melissa Murray was the kind of woman who made everyone around her feel like they mattered. At 27, she managed a busy downtown bookstore, always ready with a recommendation that somehow matched exactly what you didn't know you needed to read. Her laugh, that's what everyone remembers first. Her sister Jennifer says it could fill an entire room, make you forget whatever was troubling you. Melissa had dreams that felt within reach. She was saving money to open her own bookstore cafe, had already picked out the perfect location on South Lamar. She kept a notebook where she'd sketch the layout, plan the menu, write down names of local authors she wanted to feature. The last entry in that notebook was dated 3 days before her world ended. Does this sound like someone you know? That person who lights up every room they enter? Tell us in the comments. What detail about Melissa reminds you of someone you care about? She was supposed to marry Daniel Cole in the spring. Daniel was everything Melissa wasn't. Where she was warm and open, he was calculating and intense. A real estate investor who drove expensive cars and wore watches that cost more than most people's rent. But Melissa saw something in him that others missed, or maybe she saw what he wanted her to see. Their relationship was Austin's most talked about romance and its most whispered about concern. Friends described explosive fights followed by grand romantic gestures. Daniel would disappear for days, then show up with jewelry and promises. Melissa's best friend, Amber Morris, begged her to leave him. He controlled everything, Amber told investigators later. What she wore, who she talked to, how she spent her money. But Melissa kept saying he needed her, that she was the only one who really understood him. The last time Amber saw Melissa truly happy was at their engagement party. Melissa wore a vintage yellow dress that brought out her eyes, and for one night, Daniel seemed like the man she'd fallen in love with. But Amber noticed how he watched Melissa throughout the evening, cataloging every conversation, every laugh, every moment she wasn't focused entirely on him. Here's what haunts everyone who knew her. Melissa called her mom every single Sunday at exactly 2 p.m. For 8 years without fail. Rain or shine, sick or healthy, fighting with Daniel or not. That call happened. Until it didn't. October 15th, 1999. That Sunday, the phone never rang. Margaret Murray waited until 2:30, then called Melissa. Straight to voicemail. She tried again at 3, at 4, at 6. By Sunday evening, she was calling hospitals. By Monday morning, she was calling police. My daughter has never missed a call, she told Officer Thomas Wright. Something is very, very wrong. But the Austin Police Department wasn't concerned about a missed phone call from a 28-year-old woman. Adults have the right to disappear, they told Margaret. Maybe she went away for the weekend with her fiancé. Maybe they had a fight and she needed space. What the family discovered next should have launched the biggest missing person investigation Austin had ever seen. Instead, it became the evidence that would convict Melissa of murder. Jennifer Murray used her spare key to check Melissa's apartment on Tuesday evening. The scene she found still gives her nightmares. Melissa's purse was on the kitchen counter, her wallet and ID inside. Her car keys hung on their usual hook by the door. Her bed hadn't been slept in, but there were signs of a struggle in the living room. Overturned coffee table, scattered papers, a lamp knocked to the floor. Most telling of all, Melissa's notebook, her dream book where she planned her future bookstore, was ripped in half and thrown in the trash. Melissa would have died before she let anyone destroy that notebook, Jennifer says. That book was her soul. But Daniel Cole had an explanation for everything. He'd been out of town on business, had the hotel receipts to prove it. When he returned and found the apartment destroyed, he assumed Melissa had finally snapped under the pressure of their volatile relationship. She'd been drinking more lately, he told police, getting violent during arguments. He showed them photos of scratches on his arms, claimed she'd attacked him during their last fight. What kind of person takes photos of scratches and saves them for later? What was Daniel Cole planning even before Melissa disappeared? The investigation took a devastating turn when police searched Melissa's car. Hidden beneath the spare tire in her trunk, they found blood. DNA testing confirmed it was Daniel's blood, a lot of it. Enough to suggest fatal blood loss. Then came the surveillance footage that sealed Melissa's fate. Security cameras from a nearby apartment complex showed a woman matching Melissa's description, dragging a large, heavy trash bag from her building to a dumpster at 3:17 a.m. on October 16th. The figure in the grainy footage struggled with the weight, stopping twice to rest. But here's where the case gets even more disturbing. When police searched that dumpster 3 days later, they found nothing. Someone had emptied it, and the waste management company claimed they had no record of any unusual pickup. Investigators never found Daniel's body. They never found the murder weapon. They never found witnesses to the alleged crime. But they had blood, they had footage, and they had a defendant who couldn't, or wouldn't, explain what happened that night. If you're already questioning everything about this case, make sure you're subscribed because what happened next will make you lose faith in our entire justice system. Melissa's trial began on a cold February morning in 2001. The prosecution painted her as a woman pushed to the breaking point by an abusive relationship, someone who finally snapped and killed the man she couldn't escape. They had the blood evidence, they had the surveillance footage, and they had Daniel's testimony about her increasingly erratic behavior. But the defense faced an impossible challenge. How do you defend someone who can't remember what happened? Melissa maintained that she'd blacked out after their final fight. She remembered Daniel screaming at her about money, about her friends, about her pathetic little bookstore dream. She remembered throwing a wine glass against the wall, remembered the sound of it shattering. After that, nothing until she woke up on her bathroom floor 12 hours later with no memory of the night. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Prosecutor Amanda Rodriguez said in her closing argument, the defendant wants you to believe that she conveniently forgot committing murder, but the evidence doesn't lie. Daniel Cole's blood in her trunk doesn't lie. That surveillance footage doesn't lie. Melissa Murray killed the man she claimed to love, and now she's asking you to let her get away with it. Defense attorney Robert Phillips fought back with everything he had. He brought in expert witnesses to testify about traumatic blackouts, about how extreme stress could cause memory loss. He highlighted the lack of a body, the missing murder weapon, the suspicious timing of evidence discovery. But the most powerful moment of the trial came when Melissa finally took the stand. I love Daniel, she said, tears streaming down her face. Yes, our relationship was difficult. Yes, we fought. But I never would have hurt him. I don't care what the evidence suggests. I know who I am, and I am not a killer. The jury deliberated for 8 hours. When they returned with their verdict, Melissa's mother collapsed in the courtroom. Guilty of second-degree murder. 35 years to life. As the bailiff led Melissa away in handcuffs, she turned to her family one last time. Keep looking for him, she mouthed. Please keep looking. What would you have done if you were on that jury? Does the evidence sound convincing to you, or does something feel off about this whole case? Let us know in the comments. 22 years. That's 8,030 days of Melissa's life stolen by a lie she didn't even know was a lie. She learned to survive in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice system, earned her GED, then a bachelor's degree in psychology through correspondence courses. She tutored other inmates, led addiction recovery groups, became someone other women turned to when the world felt hopeless. But every single day, she wrote in her journal, Every single day, she maintained her innocence. And every single day, her family fought for her on the outside. Jennifer Murray became a one-woman investigative force. She hired private detectives when she could afford it, scoured missing persons databases, followed up on every tip and rumor about Daniel's possible whereabouts. She started a blog called Justice for Melissa that attracted supporters from around the world. Their mother, Margaret, died in 2018 without seeing her daughter freed. At the funeral, Melissa was granted a 6-hour compassionate release, her first time outside prison walls in 19 years. She spent those 6 hours holding her mother's hand and promising she'd never stop fighting for the truth. Imagine watching your child waste away behind bars for a crime you know they didn't commit. Imagine dying without seeing justice. How does a family survive that kind of pain? In 2021, after exemplary behavior and completing every rehabilitation program available, Melissa was granted parole. At 50 years old, she walked out of the Mountain View unit in Gatesville, Texas, with $200 in her pocket and a world that had moved on without her. No smartphones when she went in. Social media didn't exist. The Twin Towers still stood. Now she was supposed to navigate a digital world while finding a job with a murder conviction on her record. She moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico, where a prison advocacy group had found her a room in a halfway house and a job washing dishes at Murphy's Diner on Central Avenue. It wasn't much, but it was honest work, and Melissa had learned to be grateful for small freedoms most of us take for granted. For 11 months, she rebuilt, made friends with her coworkers, started taking community college courses, slowly began to believe she might actually have a future. Then came Tuesday, March 15th, 2022. What happened next is so unbelievable that if it were fiction, you'd call it ridiculous. But truth, as they say, is stranger than fiction. Lunch rush at Murphy's Diner. Melissa was covering tables because their regular waitress had called in sick. Just another Tuesday in a string of Tuesdays, serving coffee and taking orders from truckers and local office workers. The bell above the door chimed at 1:47 p.m. A man walked in with a woman and 2 children, a boy about 8, a girl maybe 6. Typical family. Nothing unusual. The man was asking the hostess about their kids' menu when Melissa looked up from wiping down table 6. Time stopped. The coffee pot slipped from her hands and shattered on the floor, but she barely heard it. Every sound in the diner became muffled, like she was underwater. Her vision tunneled until all she could see was his face. Older now, grayer at the temples, but unmistakably him. Daniel Cole, the man she'd supposedly murdered, alive, well, and asking if they had high chairs. How do you even process a moment like that? Your brain would refuse to accept what your eyes were seeing. You'd think you were hallucinating, losing your mind. Melissa stood frozen as Daniel, who was now apparently going by Jason, helped his daughter into a booster seat. The little girl had his eyes, the same unusual green that Melissa once thought she'd never see again. His wife was beautiful, blonde, laughing at something he whispered in her ear. They looked happy. They looked like a real family. Cook called out, asking if she was okay. The broken coffee pot had drawn everyone's attention. Melissa mumbled something about being clumsy, grabbed a broom and tried to appear normal while her entire understanding of reality crumbled around her. She couldn't stop staring. Daniel Jason ordered a burger, helped his son color on the kids' menu, kissed his wife's cheek when she made a joke about his terrible dad humor. He looked content in a way Melissa had never seen during their 2 years together. Here's what's really twisted. This man was living the life Melissa should have had. While she was learning to sleep with a roommate who screamed through nightmares, he was reading bedtime stories. While she was eating mystery meat in a prison cafeteria, he was having family dinners. When their food arrived, Melissa forced herself to walk to their table. Her hands were shaking so badly she nearly dropped the plates. "Here's your burger," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel looked up at her with mild interest, the way you'd look at any waitress. No recognition, no guilt, no awareness that he was staring at the woman whose life he'd destroyed. "Thanks," he said. "Could we get some more ketchup?" That's when Melissa knew for certain. This wasn't some incredible case of mistaken identity. This was Daniel Cole, alive and well, and asking for condiments while she'd spent 22 years paying for his fake death. She brought the ketchup, went back to the kitchen, and told her manager she was sick. Then she sat in her car in the diner parking lot and sobbed until she couldn't breathe. When Daniel's family finished their meal and left, Melissa followed them. Keeping a safe distance, she watched them pile into a silver Honda Pilot with New Mexico plates. She watched Daniel buckle his children into car seats, kiss his wife goodbye in the parking lot of a dentist's office, drive away like he was any other suburban dad running errands. Melissa took pictures, shaky amateur photos with her cheap cell phone, but clear enough to prove what she'd seen. Then she made the call that would finally change everything. Jennifer Murray was at work when her phone rang. She almost didn't answer. Unknown New Mexico number, probably a scam call. But something made her pick up. "Jenny?" Melissa's voice was strange, hollow. "I need you to sit down." What followed was a conversation that would haunt both sisters for the rest of their lives. Jennifer later said it was like getting a call from someone who'd just witnessed their own resurrection. "He's alive, Jenny. Daniel's alive. He has a wife and kids and he's living in Albuquerque under the name Jason Keller. I served his family lunch today." Jennifer's first instinct wasn't relief or joy. It was pure, white-hot rage. While their mother died heartbroken, while Melissa lost decades of her life, Daniel Cole was coaching Little League. But Jennifer had learned to channel emotion into action. Within hours, she'd hired Lucas Thompson, a private investigator specializing in fraud cases. She sent him the photos Melissa had taken, along with everything she'd compiled about Daniel over the past 23 years. Thompson's investigation moved fast. Within a week, he'd confirmed Melissa's impossible story. Jason Michael Keller had appeared in Las Vegas in early 2000 with a Nevada birth certificate and a social security number that belonged to a child who'd died in 1962. He'd married Linda Rodriguez in 2008, adopted her surname through a legal name change to Jason Rodriguez Keller in 2010, then quietly dropped the Rodriguez part by 2015. Here's where this gets even more sick. Jason Daniel had been collecting life insurance money. A $500,000 policy he'd taken out just 6 months before his death, with himself listed as the beneficiary under the Jason Keller identity. The financial records Thompson uncovered painted a picture of methodical fraud. Daniel had been skimming money from his real estate deals for months before his disappearance, building a nest egg for his new life. He'd created the Jason Keller identity almost a year before he vanished, establishing credit, getting a driver's license, laying the groundwork for his escape. But the most damning evidence was what Thompson found in Storage Unit 247 at Stowaway Storage in Henderson, Nevada. Rented by Jason Keller and paid automatically from a bank account Daniel had hidden from everyone, including Melissa. Inside that storage unit, detailed plans for faking his death, including handwritten notes about how to plant blood evidence and where surveillance cameras would capture incriminating footage, props for the fake injury photos he'd shown police, and a journal documenting his growing hatred for Melissa and his excitement about his planned freedom. One entry, dated 2 weeks before his disappearance, read, "M is getting too clingy, asking too many questions about money. Time to end this and start fresh. She'll take the blame. Who's going to believe her over a dead man?" Thompson turned his evidence over to the FBI, the Texas Rangers, and the New Mexico State Police simultaneously. 3 agencies, 3 jurisdictions, all suddenly very interested in a case they'd considered closed for over 2 decades. The arrest happened at 6:47 a.m. on a Thursday morning. Daniel saw Jason was getting his coffee when federal agents surrounded his house. His wife and children watched from their kitchen window as the man they'd known as a loving husband and father was led away in handcuffs. Linda Rodriguez Keller later told investigators she'd had no idea about her husband's true identity. The children, now 10 and 8, had called him Dad their entire lives. Another family destroyed by Daniel's selfish cruelty. The charges came fast and heavy: identity fraud, insurance fraud, perjury, obstruction of justice, evidence tampering, and conspiracy. In Texas, he faced additional charges for the financial crimes that had prompted his original flight. But for Melissa, the most important moment came 3 months later in a sterile courthouse conference room. Her lawyer had arranged for her to confront Daniel face-to-face with prosecutors present to document his confession. Melissa asked him only one question: why? Daniel's answer was delivered with the same casual indifference he'd shown when ordering lunch. You were getting too close to figuring out my business deals. I needed a clean start, and you were convenient. I figured you'd get manslaughter, maybe do 8 to 10 years. I didn't think they'd give you life. 22 years of Melissa's life, dismissed as an inconvenience. Their mother's broken heart, shrugged off as collateral damage. Daniel Cole pled guilty to all charges in March 2023. He was sentenced to 40 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole until 2063. He'll be 89 years old if he lives that long. The Texas conviction that stole Melissa's life was officially overturned. Her record was expunged and she received a settlement of $2.3 million from the state, roughly $100,000 for each year she spent behind bars. But money can't buy back decades. It can't resurrect her mother, who died believing her daughter was a killer. It can't restore the children Melissa never had, the career she never built, the life she never got to live. Today, Melissa Murray lives quietly in Austin, not far from where this nightmare began. She speaks at conferences about wrongful convictions, works with innocence projects, tries to ensure other families don't endure what hers did. She's 53 now, learning to navigate dating apps and social media, experiencing things most people figure out in their 20s. But she's not bitter. That's what's remarkable about Melissa Murray. Prison didn't break her spirit. It refined it into something stronger. I can't get those years back, she told us in a recent interview. But I can make sure they weren't completely wasted. If my story helps one person, if it changes one law, if it makes one jury think twice before convicting without a body, then maybe some good can come from all that pain. Jennifer Murray continues her advocacy work, now focusing on cases of men who fake their deaths to escape responsibility. She's helped identify 3 other cases with similar patterns, potentially saving other innocent people from Melissa's fate. And Daniel Cole? He spends his days in federal prison in Colorado, finally experiencing a fraction of the confinement he inflicted on Melissa. His children visit occasionally, struggling to understand how the father they loved could have destroyed so many lives. This case raises uncomfortable questions about our justice system that deserve answers. How did investigators miss so many red flags? Why wasn't Daniel's suspicious behavior examined more closely? How did an entire law enforcement apparatus fail so completely? What other cases are out there where the victim isn't actually dead? How many innocent people are serving time for crimes that never happened? And here's the question that should keep prosecutors awake at night. If a private investigator could uncover the truth in 1 week, why couldn't professional investigators find it in 23 years? You're here because stories like Melissa's make you as angry as they make us, because you believe in justice, in truth, in the idea that innocent people shouldn't rot in prison while their accusers live free. What part of this case angers you most? The police investigation that ignored obvious holes? The prosecutor who pursued a case without a body? The system that failed Melissa at every turn? Do you think 40 years is enough punishment for stealing someone's entire adult life? Should Daniel Cole face murder charges for the psychological death he inflicted on Melissa? And here's what we really want to know. How many other Daniel Coles are out there, living under assumed names while their victims pay for crimes that never happened? If you know anything about similar cases, men who disappeared under suspicious circumstances, women convicted of murder without a body, investigations that seemed too quick or too convenient, please share that information. You could be saving someone's life. Melissa Murray spent 8,030 days in prison for a murder that never happened. That's 8,030 sunrises she watched through bars instead of windows. 8,030 nights she went to sleep knowing the world believed she was a killer. But she survived. She endured. And ultimately, she proved that truth has a way of surfacing, even when powerful people try to bury it. If this story moved you, if it made you question what you thought you knew about justice, hit that like button right now. Share it with someone who needs to see how broken our system can be. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Every week we dive deep into cases that law enforcement gave up on, stories that mainstream media won't touch, mysteries that deserve to be solved. Your subscription helps us reach more families, investigate more cases, and maybe even help solve cold murders. We're not just telling stories here. We're fighting for justice, one case at a time. Subscribe today and join our growing army of truth seekers who refuse to let these cases be forgotten in filing cabinets. Hit that notification bell because you won't want to miss what we uncover next. Some of these revelations will absolutely blow your mind. Please share this with someone who needs to hear it. What specific detail about this case bothered you the most? Do you think investigators should have approached this differently? Do you have any theories about what really happened? Tell us what you think in the comments below. Your perspective could be crucial to solving this case. What unsolved mystery should we investigate next? Let us know in the comments below. Remember, every case deserves to be solved, and the search for answers never ends.